I'm a I'm a man that knows and has seen the risen Lord Jesus Christ, and I want to talk about various serious matters that billions of people will be facing in the future and in the very near future, and you really need to start being proactive. I'm talking to the general population about getting through to your representatives about matters that actually concern your quality of life. Um, in America and all over the world, people have been used to having, how do you say, land and open spaces and so on and so forth. And so the wealthy have been used to just being able to buy whatever they want, including real property, land, and homes, and so on and so forth. But in a global population, or even in a geophysical area on the earth in which there are many people, when only a few people own everything, um, all the rest of the people are at the mercy of landlords. And 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 just because the market can bear, people so desperate that they pay everything they make into shelter and have nothing for food or clothes or anything else. It doesn't mean that that's ethical, to jack rents to the highest possible levels that any region can bear. And at this point, because of the global population and because of the fact that landlords are driving people homeless and to die in the streets, because that's factually what's occurring here in America now, all over this world. The wealthiest people are owning everything, and the poor masses own nothing. And I'm saying to the poor masses, you've got to get pissed off enough to get in the faces of your representatives here in America and all over this world, and 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 and, and create laws that are called an absolute right to affordable housing, where everybody has the absolute right to own their own primary residence, own, not rent, where they're not subject to the whim of another citizen to just jack their cost of living on them from month to month at any given moment. Landlords are doing that now. That can't be legal because they're factually assaulting their poor tenants at this point, assaulting and murdering. They're driving the poorest, and these are not just, um, as people want to think, lazy people. These are people that just reach an age where they're that wealthy, have retired and stuff, and they've got, their savings and their pensions and their benefits and everything else to live out their golden years. But the poor that have been working slave wage jobs their whole life have no savings. They have no pensions. They have no benefits. They have no retirement. And they're relegated to fixed income, and that fixed income is not keeping up with landlords jacking rents just because they can all over the planet, buying up every little bit of real property they can possibly put their hands on, and killing people in the process. That's exactly what's going on. They become so greedy that they become murderous, and maybe they don't realize that they're greedy murderers, but somebody needs to tell them that that's what they've become. Landlords are killing people. Indiscriminate buying of real estate has got to stop. If I were president, I'd declare a state of national emergency until every homeless person was off the streets, until every single person in America had their own dwelling. And I'd tell citizens to lobby their representatives or lawmakers to create rights to affordable housing for everyone lifelong, indefinitely. In other words, until the good Lord returns. Or you're going to have citizens just on a whim killing people, because that's exactly what's going down right now. I'm speaking from personal lifelong experience. I have been shoved from place to place to place to place by landlords jacking rents on me, until there's just no place else to go. It is an absolute attack on poor citizens, on the poor working masses, and on the elderly and disabled. It's an attack on our lives. Somebody, I mean, has got to take notice that's in power and realize that things are they're this bad. You've got hundreds of thousands of homeless people, half of which are the elderly and disabled, dying in the streets. That is serious. That's a great evil of our day. It's a genocide taking place against the poor masses. And it's not going to get better by you pretending like you're never going to get old, that you're always going to be healthy until the day, that you're always going to be able to work until the day you fall over dead. But right now, if you get injured in war, by an accident, or by crime, mugged, poisoned, disabled in any way to the point where you can't work and earn a living, you're immediately reduced to below poverty level income on Social Security disability in America. Fixed income that you have to try to survive on when you're injured, sick, and possibly terminally ill and dying. It's a basically insult to the working masses that you pay into disability insurance that isn't enough to live on, and that landlords don't even care that they're driving such injured, innocent citizens into their deaths in the streets. Which brings me to just talking about death in general. No, no method of death is pleasant or enjoyable, folks. Um, the very best way you can transition from this life to the next, at least from a, how do you say, a personal viewpoint, unless you're desiring glory in the hereafter as a martyr, is for God just to take your spirit out of your body. All quick deaths are the most merciful. The most painful are the slow, debilitating ones. The ones that your body is losing functionality, whether it's Alzheimer's and where your neurological functions starts to go. That might be merciful in the end results, depending on what part of the brain is no longer functioning, like perhaps your pain centers. But a long, slow, drawn out, painful demise from whether by injury or by chronic ailment, disease, anything like that, is absolutely the worst way to die, as far as just experiencing pain and suffering in this world. So, if this world has become so cold and so callous that it's driving the elderly and disabled, innocent people to die in the streets, and people don't care, I mean, it could definitely happen to you. It could happen to anybody. It could happen to the richest person on earth. Yes, you could get injured. Tragedy could strike. People could conspire against you. All kinds of things to drive you homeless into the streets. I'm telling you that there's people and groups of people that evil on the planet now. It absolutely is a method of murder. I know. I'm speaking from firsthand experience here. I know what the hell I'm talking about, and I'm not going quietly. I'm speaking out about this. Um, in my own area, and my landlords know that this building has disabled people in it on fixed incomes. The past two landlords, and both of them raised rents um, by significant percentages. But this newest one is attempting to raise rent from one month to the next, um, 40 to 50%. None of us on fixed income can afford that. And there's no place to go. All available rents across America are being jacked by landlords ubiquitously. There's no place for the poor, elderly, and disabled to go. We're being attacked. We're being overtly attacked by this buy it and flip it practice going on by people far better off than the poor working masses that own multiple properties and are just buying and trading real estate like as if it was some kind of game. When people are factually, when the poor, elderly, and disabled are forced to move by raising rents, if we can even find a place, we don't have a savings to draw on. We don't even have cars. We can't move ourselves physically. We don't have the physical strength to be able to even lift our furniture anymore. So the poor, elderly, and disabled, when rents are jacked on them, are being robbed of every last penny they have. The last of their personal possessions. It is downright sinister, evil, and outright cruelty of unimaginable proportions. Like I said, it's so cruel, it's so evil to drive innocent people to die homeless in the streets that I don't blame ne'er one of them if they can for standing up for their rights to life, for these overt attacks on their life. I'm serious. As far as I'm concerned, they have the absolute right to defend themselves. When you drive an elderly, disabled, or chronically ill person into the streets, you're giving them a death sentence, and a most cruel one, to die of exposure. They can't survive in the streets. So this brings me to the fact that if the world has actually become that evil now, that people just think that's acceptable, that if you get injured in war or by natural disaster or some disease, some chronic ailment, some crime, somebody just attacks you, mugs you, and disables you. My situation, my ex tried to poison me for the life insurance. Doctors and nurses tried to kill me in hospitals for my organs. They gave me an incompatible blood transfusion and sent me home untreated to suffer and die. I was a hard-working person. I was working more than full-time. I had insurances. I had my home. I was even investing for my future in order not to be dependent upon society or anyone else for help in my old age. I was trying my best to become financially solvent. When attacks on my life left me so sick and fighting for my life that I just lost everything. I lost all my investments. I lost my own home, and I was reduced to whatever I had to give or sell all my personal possessions except for what could fit into a 500 square foot apartment. And now there's no place for me to go. Landlords are jacking rents in the whole region. Affordable housing has years and years of a waiting list. So even if you get approved, even if you're on fixed income, even if you're disabled and get approved, there's not actually physical housing units available. So even if you get approved, there's no guarantee that you're not going to die homeless in the streets due to these practices of people just buying property, and because there's no laws, no rent control laws, not enough, and not enough laws in place protecting innocent people from being robbed by landlords. Seriously robbed. When a poor person is forced to move, they're forced to sell under duress, and everybody knows that. So they pay pennies on the dollar for whatever possessions they still have that might have any value to somebody else, whether it's furniture or electronics or whatever. And the poor disabled person is left with nothing. A few pennies, man, to try to come up with a security deposit to rent somewhere else, and praying that landlord doesn't jack the rents to the point where there's just absolutely no place for them to go but to the streets. So this brings me to death and dying, that if the world has become so cruel due to just overpopulation or whatever, the perceived evil or something of overpopulation, to the point where that if somebody becomes disabled, you become so useless to the rest of humanity that they just want to kill you, that could happen to anybody. I was working lawfully. I was not committing crimes. I was working as hard as I could. I was a tax-paying citizen. I had insurance, and I was building my own net worth in order to be financially solvent and secure into my future. When my own life came under attack in the two ways that I described, and the 1-2 blow of both of those, man, put me down hard. I have yet to recover. I have not recovered good health since. I have been suffering in agony ever since. And I have tried. And it's not that I'm giving up hope. I know the good Lord. I've seen the risen Lord Jesus Christ. I know he's nothing but good, and I know he can heal me. But for whatever reason, it hasn't happened. And I think it's so that I could experience what the poor masses are enduring right now. And it's getting worse. So that I could speak up while I still have breath to do so. That this has got to stop right now. And that means while you're still healthy and strong enough, you've got to pressure lawmakers to protect you. Anyone can get injured. Everyone grows old. At some point, you're not going to be able to work. And if that's the case, and you've been working your whole life and don't have a penny in the bank because housing costs are that high, electricity, the cost of living is that high, wages are not keeping up with the cost of living for at least 30% of the population, and at the very bottom of that, people are dying prematurely. And it's getting worse. In other words, growing numbers are becoming impoverished under these practices of buying it and flipping it, where wealthy people are just buying up all the real estate and driving poor people homeless. There's vacant properties even, but they'll still keep the rents high. They'd rather have a vacant property than have poor elderly and disabled people in it. They're killing people. I'm not bringing a false accusation here. These are verified statistics. Currently 40 to 50% of the homeless population in the hundreds of thousands now across America are the elderly and disabled. In other words, just because somebody gets chronically ill or injured, they're being driven into the streets to suffer exposure and die prematurely. HUD, affordable housing across this country, has a waiting list. I don't know of any region where they've got enough vacancies for the demand. That means affordable housing is not being built and/or dedicated in sufficient numbers for the need at all. And that means poor people, even if they're working poor, that qualify for protection from what's occurring, death by exposure prematurely in the streets. What a cruel way to die. I'm just saying, if the world has become that outrageously evil, try to tap into some humanity somewhere, please. And at least offer such people, if they're facing death by exposure, homelessness in the streets, at least offer them sedative palliative end-of-life care. If they're being sentenced to death to die homeless, at least give them the alternative, to have the humanity to give them the compassion of being put to sleep. I mean, for crying out loud, animals are treated better than these people. Pets are at least sedated by vets. They're at least compassionately put down. They're not forced to die of exposure in the streets. They call it humane society for pets. But is there such an organization for people? No, not that I'm aware of. The poor don't even have enough to pay for sedative palliative care. They're being that victimized. People far better off than them are taking everything they can from them before they kill them. When you raise the cost of living, a poor person is looking at dying homeless, or trying to come up with everything they can in order to prevent from being murdered that way. So they lose all their possessions in the process. It's not that they don't want to work, it's that they can't get work. They're sick. The truly elderly and truly disabled, if they could find a way to keep themselves alive under this situation, they try. I'm just speaking up. I'm just being like, is it really come down to poor people have to work until they fall over dead at the job under slave wages? Do they never get a vacation or a retirement? I mean, is quality of life become that in the modern era? I see people that can barely stand on their feet working jobs now. And I'm telling you that the real reason is just what I'm saying. They're terrified of dying in the streets homeless. Ever since the attacks on my life occurred, I have desperately been trying to find a way. It's not that I don't have knowledge and skills. It's just that I'm really, really sick. Some days I can't get out of bed. So I cannot commit to a 9 to 5 or an hourly schedule or anything like that. I just can't. I haven't been able to for years. I've been seriously in so much pain that I never know when I'm going to finally be able to get to sleep or when I'm going to wake up. So I have no 24-hour schedule at all with my sleep rhythms. Not, haven't had it for years. If I could afford, daily sedation to put myself on a 24-hour clock again, I might try that. I don't like drugs, but when you're in as much pain as I'm in, you get to the point where it's like, if God won't intervene and alleviate it and or heal you, you're just asking yourself, is the message from God that we're supposed to try whatever will work, whatever will help us? Is the message from God, if He won't alleviate pain and suffering and death, that we should? Seriously, I have looked at death and have experienced death in many ways by divine revelations, and I'm telling you, on a battlefield, um, no way to provide first aid to somebody so severely injured and they are dying. It might be an hour or two before they finally whatever bleed out enough, or typically it's not that long, but it can still, even minutes can seem like, I mean, forever if you're dying in excruciating agony. Um, Horses in the old days where there was on trails where there was no vet service and no way to whatever bind up their broken legs and stuff. Bullet to the head, to prevent them from just laying there and dying of dehydration. You're going to die of dehydration before you die of hunger. People typically last anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks after they stop drinking. I mean, unless you're in the desert, you know, and your dehydration is accelerated. But if you're just laying in bed in a controlled environment and you stop drinking and eating, you'll die of dehydration somewhere between 1 and 3 weeks, depending on, just, I suppose, how much reserves you have, how much vitality you still have left in your person. Now, they call that compassionate end of life care, and I'm like, no, it's not. Um, willfully dying by ceasing from eating and drinking is not compassionate at all. It is most unpleasant. Um, eventually, the dehydration causes your blood to get really thick, your tongue to feel like sandpaper, even your eyes to blink scratches. It is a very unpleasant way to die. It is not pleasant, folks. So all these end of life compassionate care sites telling you just to willfully stop eating and drinking. Some people are in so much agony that and so poor and in a state where they don't have any options. I'm just letting you know, folks, that the vast majority of people do not die in pleasant ways. No, they don't. And some of the ways people die, even though God's good, are so horrific and so agonizing that if you really knew and saw, I'm sure the whole world would just burst out in terror, crying, praying to God Almighty that you don't die that horrifically. Seriously. Okay, now I know of suffering, real suffering, and I'm telling you that I am begging humanity to come to your senses and show some compassion. If you're in a battlefield and there is no way um, the injured person is going to survive and live for it, the most compassionate thing you can do is give them a quick death, straight up. Now, some people um, might want to try to live. You have to listen to them. If they know they're dying and they ask you to give them a quick death, then the most loving and compassionate, merciful thing you could do is grant it, straight up. Um, sometimes you might not have a weapon, um, a knife that a sharp knife that cuts across their jugular. There's the arteries that feed the brain are about as quick and painless way to death as you can give somebody um, with just a knife. They bleed out really quick, and the lack of blood to the brain causes them to lose consciousness rapidly, and the lack of blood to the pain centers in the brain actually causes them to die rather painlessly. Um, slitting the wrist, no, but you cut the jugulars that go to the artery that feeds the brain. Yeah. No, I hate to talk about these things, but I feel like I've got to. I feel like the living need to know because we are born into bodies of death. Short of a miracle, we're all going to die. In other words, unless you're alive when Christ returns and he just transforms you, we're all going to die in various ways. And the most painful ways, some of the most cruel ways, is just what's going on right now. Um, shoving the elderly and disabled off into the streets, for crying out loud. Unbelievable. I can't believe that these are the conditions on Earth these days. Um, I know people are better than this. And I need you to, I'm really beseeching you to ceaselessly get on lawmakers' backs until they make laws that protect citizens from this. Right to affordable housing lifelong, especially if you become injured, chronically ill, elderly, and disabled. It happens to us all, folks. There comes a day when you just cannot, absolutely, no matter how bad you might want to, continue to function on a level that's employable. I have knowledge, I can give advice and counsel, but I can't physically do the manual labor I used to do. No way. Labor like working 20 hours a day of lifting, I mean, more than 10 tons of household goods every single day back to back. That's why I'm rather large. I can't do that anymore. And if you've done physical manual labor, then in your old age, there's not a lot of, how do you say, desk jobs available. And the ones that are all available, people are fight over, like whatever, selling insurance or even if you were knowledgeable enough to work up to a level of being general contractor, foreman, real estate broker, so on and so forth. The desk jobs are fought over. In other words, there are not a lot of available jobs that you can live on reasonably. Available jobs are typically jobs that you have to work 2 and 3 of in order to pay your bills. In other words, minimum wage jobs that are not keeping up with the cost of living either, at all, not even close. People working full time that still can't pay their bills. Some people working full time that are actually homeless. Um, it's inexcusable. There are vacant homes across America. There are homes, mansions that the wealthy own that have nobody living in them. And maybe they have some groundskeeper every now and again, maybe, I don't know, tender gardens and trim things up, you know, just in case they want to come visit or something. And yet people dying homeless in the streets. Investors swapping real estate left and right, and every time real estate's swapped, it raises the cost. Rents go up. I have yet to hear of anyone buying multifamily units or homes and actually lowering the rents. But it is desperately needed. Renters are under attack. If you have any means at this point, based on what's going on, until there's rent control nationwide, until affordable housing is a right lifelong, if you have the means as a young person, even if it takes every little penny you've got, you should own something. Or you're going to be subject to somebody being able to shove you off even your own primary residence lifelong until there's no place for you to go. Take it from somebody who knows. I don't want to beg for my life. I do want to request that if you're going to drive elderly and disabled people like myself out into the streets to die of exposure, offer us sedative palliative care, please. At least me. I would select that option as opposed to dying from exposure. I am not healthy enough to make it in the streets homeless. I know I've been homeless before. I know how hard it is. I have lived in the wilderness with a tent and stuff and a backpack. It's not like I'm not familiar with outdoor living or anything like that. I mean, if I had a choice of dying in the city on the streets in some gutter and dying in, I don't know, the millions and millions of acres of uninhabited national forests that still exist, I would prefer the forest if I had that choice. I'm not strong enough to, in other words, I'm not strong enough to go hiking miles and miles inland into national forest, or at this point I'd be considering it. So what I'm saying is, if modern civilization has gotten to the point where they just think the elderly and disabled have absolutely nothing to contribute to the rest of humanity, that their lifelong experience is totally useless, that they don't want to create, like I've suggested over and over again, a website called The Wisdom of the Elders, where everybody says what's the most important life lessons they learned and what they would suggest for the future to improve quality of life for everyone. If you're not going to do things like that and value people's life experiences, if you're just going to discard them, you're just going to assault them and take every last thing they have from them and put them in the streets. If that's what humanity, the powers that be, have come down to, if you're that cold-blooded and cruel, um, I'm asking the rest of humanity, the masses, so you don't have to smell the stench of rotting corpses in the streets, to offer such people sedative palliative care. I'm letting you know that, as far as I know, the most compassionate way to transition from this life to the next, short of a miracle from God Almighty Himself, is for the rest of humanity to make it the right of patients to select sedative palliative care. In other words, what I'm saying is to let every patient, it's not the doctor's decision, it's not anyone else's decision. The patient has to make their own choice. But if they make their own choice for sedative palliative care, that is a merciful way to go. I'm telling you, I know the Lord Jesus Christ, and I'm behind what's called physician-assisted suicide end-of-life compassionate care. I don't think of it as suicide. I think of it as the fact that somebody is terminally ill and dying anyways, and they're dying in a way that is absolutely hellish. And we have the technology and the compassion to put down our pets when they're suffering in their old age. And yet we don't do it for people. And I'm saying that if you love God and you love people, I'm saying this needs to be implemented. Stop forcing people to endure their final moments on earth in agony, in unbearable pain and suffering, people. Straight up. Uh, I'm listening to besides my own personal suffering, I'm listening to friends and elders and even my own adopted father describe the symptoms that he's enduring in his old age, late 70s, and he's been diagnosed with what's called Meniere's, and it's it's intense vertigo, in, intense dizziness in which a person can suddenly just, whether they're sitting or walking or anything, just fall over, and maybe not even completely unconscious, but their balance completely goes and they just fall down. And on top of that, it can be extremely unpleasant. In other words, cause severe nausea, vomiting, um, it's like worst case motion sickness. only no escape from it. In other words, apparently incurable. Now, I sent him things that supposedly help with it. Supposedly, people trying. It's just better than nothing. I sent him things that help with nausea and stuff like that, but they were teas, and he's like, I can't drink hot beverages. I'm like, Dad, you drank sun tea for years. In other words, when you brew tea, you can still chill it, and that includes ginseng tea, ginseng lemon honey tea. You brew it hot, but you stick it in the fridge, and if you start to feel nauseated, or if you're coming out of a spell of being nauseated, you can sip it cold if you can't take it hot. What I'm getting at is some people are suffering, and there really is nobody to really help them, or no known ability to comfort them and keep them alive in the process. And that's why I am a strong proponent for patients' right, patients' choice, sedative palliative care. Now, I do not like the options that I've read thus far. Um, Second of all, I'm not familiar with. Actually, I've never tried that drug. It's a sleeping pill or a sedative that, if taken in large doses, um, will put you down for a dirt nap. Now, any type of drug that will put you to sleep and cause you to expire while still asleep is a merciful way to go for people that are really suffering for whatever reason, whether they've got chronic ailment, a deadly disease, any type of terminal condition, or just dying of old age where their organs are failing on them in increasing debilitating ways that often is accompanied with unbearable pain and suffering. Now, I know that there are doctors and nurses that try to explain to people what they've witnessed, but I'm telling you from experience that this is how sedative palliative care should be improved. Ingesting it is not the most painless way to do it. The most painless way to administer sedative palliative care and leave it in the decision of the patient is just to hook up a series of injections, just like they used to administer in lethal injections for capital offenses. Only the first fluid that they should inject into somebody that elects sedative palliative care. This is what I'm requesting for myself based on my research and my knowledge, and I advise other people to get behind this seriously if you really care about your end of life choices. In other words, if I knew of any more merciful and compassionate way to put somebody to sleep that is dying anyways and dying in unbearable pain, I would say so. This is the most merciful way I know. An electronic injector hooked up into their IV where they just push a button and it, and a lethal dose of morphine. Now, apparently, Seconal is a sedative similar to morphine, or something like painkiller and sedative similar to morphine. I'm speaking from my own personal experience. I don't know. I don't. I don't know about Seconal. I do know about morphine. Morphine will put somebody to sleep painlessly. Now, I know that they had a cocktail in which they give you something to drink that includes morphine, and some other drugs, and you drink it and ingest it. And I'm saying that is not as compassionate as you could be. The most compassionate way to provide sedative palliative care. I'm speaking to the whole world about this because there are billions of people on Earth, and right now billions are reaching old age, and you really, really, really need to um, focus on this and make it law. Patients' rights, patients' choice, worldwide. Sedative palliative care. The right to go to sleep painlessly. The right to end your life in a compassionate way, a painless way, or as painless as possible. If you've gotten to that point, you've probably already been suffering for years. I have. And that's why I'm such an incredible advocate for this now. I have suffered so intensely that I am an absolute proponent for patient's choice, patient's rights. And my particular choice is to have an IV put in my arm and a lethal dose of morphine put in an electronic injector that's inserted into the IV. That all I got to do is push a button, and it's night night for Michael. If you want to follow it up, to be sure, with your other drugs in your cocktail, then just put the injectors in series. So the first inject, in other words, the patient that is electing to go to sleep pushes a button, and your cocktail is put in injections in series. So the first one that goes in puts them to sleep, and they're out. They're not going to feel anything after that. But then the other injectors make sure that the brain and the heartbeat stop and everything. They're not going to wake up. They push one button, and the injectors go off in series. First, the morphine, put them to sleep painlessly. And then the rest of the medications that ensure that the brain and the heart stop functioning. And they're not going to wake up. Personally, in an ideal world, they'd make enough morphine so that you could just administer a lethal dose of morphine, kind of like Seconal. Only I think I personally now I haven't tried Seconal. I really don't want to try it. I'm just saying that from my experience, my knowledge of drugs and medications, my personal choice would be a lethal dose of morphine only. In other words, what I think compassionate care for the future should be: people know they're about to die. If they've reached old age, if they've lived that long, and and they're experiencing the pains of death. Now, some people, for some reason, are just gung-ho about absolutely forcing people to suffer those final moments, and I am just not. Because I know how intense the suffering can be, and how hellish. And I believe that it is not, how do you say, God just being cruel. I believe it's God looking down at the rest of humanity and saying, "Are you going to watch your brothers and sisters suffer that much when you don't have to and they don't want to? When I provided for you knowledge and technology and all kinds of things that can make you act out of compassion sensibly." That's how I look at it. I don't look at it as a suicide. I look at it as like end of life. In the past, people would, whatever, and even today, die in wars or die in accidents or die in all kinds of ways. But we are not offering all humanity, and we should, compassionate end-of-life choices. And I'm saying that the most compassionate, most merciful way to put somebody down, to take that final rest, is exactly what I'm saying. An electronic injection that they initiate, the patient themselves initiates, so that there can be no complications about somebody being euthanized against their will. You can have it video recorded and everything, where the patient is saying, look, I am of sound mind, and with my full knowledge and consent, I do this of my own will. And you can record it. Push that button. Forcing them to drink something that A, is not tasty, and in other words, their last experience is having something, that's poisonous in their mouth, it's unpleasant, and could cause stomach upset, or that they could experience before they nap out. Maybe regurgitation, maybe rejection just from putting it on their tongue, or even smelling it. In other words, ingesting a cocktail for sedative palliative care is not as compassionate as what I'm saying. And since we have the technology, this is the way it should be administered. Or at least give people a choice. Hey, you can drink it, or we can inject it right into your IV. What's your choice? I'm telling you my choice. Other people might want to drink it. I don't. My choice is to have an electronic injector hooked up to my IV. If I reach that age, of people don't murder me first. If I reach a point where I'm actually in hospice or an end-of-life facility, this is what I want, while I can still speak my mind. Because I don't know what the future holds. I do know I've been suffering so much that this is absolutely what I want. I want doctors and nurses to provide an electronic injector, with the first injection being morphine, put me to sleep. I'm being very specific about that. I would prefer that injection be such a nature, that it's such a large dose of morphine that it puts me to sleep, permanent, like. I mean, until the good Lord resurrects us all. Are you hearing me, please? I don't want to beg. I'm asking in all seriousness that the United States adopts this nationwide. A patient's choice, patient's rights regarding end-of-life care. I'm not a proponent for euthanization. In other words, I'm not a proponent for other people murdering people at will, whether they're disabled, whether they're elderly, whether they're competent, incompetent, whatever. I'm not a proponent for murder at all. I am a proponent for patient's choice, patient's rights, when they know they're dying and they've been suffering in ways that I can't even hardly describe, but are unbearable. Everybody experiences death differently, but most of the ways people die are not pleasant. They are not pleasant, and definitely not nearly as painless as what I'm saying. IV electronic injector, morphine. Now, if doctors and nurses, to make sure somebody doesn't wake up after they push that button, have determined that there's certain drugs that absolutely stop the heart, stop the brain, and are necessary as part of the whatever cocktail, to put somebody down. I mean, I've watched my pets be put to sleep, and they were injected in their veins with one shot from the vet, and they were gone. Like, I mean, if I had a timer, it would have been in less than 2 seconds. It was like injection, gone, that fast. Now, if we can do that for pets now, and these were pets that were, over 100 pounds. So if we can take a 100-pound animal and give them one little shot and they're gone within 2 or 3 seconds most, why can't we do that for people? If people want that, if they're requesting that. I'm requesting that. I'm not requesting that right now. I'm still of the mind, even though I've been suffering intensely, I'm still of the mind that I want to fight as hard as I can to try to regain good health. I figure I've got one more intense go at it, but I need a break. I need a break from landlords. I'm sorry. I'm really upset with these people. I don't think that they just. I don't think they are practicing the golden rule at all. Christ said, whatever you do, um, you should be thinking about, before you do, what it would be like to be on the receiving end of your action. In other words, do unto others whatsoever you would have done to you. If you would want somebody raising your cost of living by 50% or more from month to month, nobody wants that. So landlords, you got to stop doing that. I don't see how you're possibly going to enter in the good place. Christ said if you did it to the least, the poor are definitely the least, or considered the least among humanity, right? And Christ said if you did it to the least, you did it unto me. If you wouldn't treat God Almighty that way, jacking rents on him and tossing him out in the streets to die, then you can't do that to anybody. Nobody. If I had my way right now, if I were president, it's so bad I would declare a state of national emergency and I would get the homeless off the streets like right now. I'd be like, look, anybody put the word out, I'm putting it out. I've declared a state of national emergency. I want every vacancy in every motel and every hotel and in every residential building that HUD will approve. Every vacant, whatever, factory building, commercial building, whatever, converted into affordable housing right now. I want general contractors. I want subs. I want anybody and everybody who's willing to be hired and to participate in getting every single homeless man, woman, and child off the streets right now. And I mean right now. Across our nation, coast to coast. Nobody should be dying in the damn streets alone. Certainly not veterans. Or innocent people like the elderly and disabled that they've got no choice. They would, love to do something if they could to earn a living. But often are terminally ill and without friends or family or of means enough to take them in and shelter them or help them, or they would. Like I said, I mean, my own adopted father is dying himself. He can't give us any aid. Can't give me any aid. Can't give my brother any aid. I mean, not when he's trying to pay for his own final expenses. Facilities, retirement facilities and end-of-life facilities across America are so far out of the reach of the working masses, it's not even funny. There are that I'm aware of, there is no affordable housing for the elderly and disabled poor. In other words, care facilities like the middle class and the upper class enjoy. They've got catered dining and attendance and concierge and I mean the ability to whatever spas and training centers and on-site therapists and on-site doctors and nurses, care facilities. but they are pricey across the country, well out of the range of the working masses, the vast majority. In other words, if by the time you reach old age, if you haven't put away, several $1,000,000, or at least have that much value in your own primary home, um, the chances of you being able to get into any of these care facilities that actually provide care for the dying elderly are slim to none. At least until your final moments, in which, if that's the only facility in the whole area that has any bed, they might let you in, and administer a few shots in your final days, something like that. What I'm getting at is the quality of life lifelong between the haves and the have-nots is huge. And I'm saying, since the vast majority of the people on earth are the have-nots, you got to put pressure on the haves as hard as you can to say, hey, create affordable end-of-life care facilities for everyone. Everybody that's working honorably shouldn't, how do you say, look at their final moments on earth as pure hell. You might have worked your whole life in whatever construction, but it was enough for maybe, I don't know, a small home. But you don't have the ability to pay, $10,000 a month for a care facility, end of life hospice or whatever, and attendees and concierges and whatever, gyms and spas and therapists and everything else. You can't afford that. But if lawmakers passed bills and just made that part of your retirement, Social Security, and so on and so forth, that people, once you reach a certain age, you have the right to enter into these affordable end-of-life care facilities for everyone. Why not? It could be done. Yes, it could, folks. The vast majority of you, man, in America, just in the past decade, the amount of those renting has increased all the way up to 50% of our population. In other words, half of the American population are renting at the mercy of landlords. And most renters have little to no savings. So we're talking hundreds of millions of people are going to reach old age, more than likely, and have zilch. And if you don't fight for a quality of end-of-life care for yourselves now while you still can, it's not going to be there. As far as I can tell, the reason why not just rents are being jacked, but all these care facilities, the good ones, charge a fortune, thousands of dollars per month to live there. Thousands. So anybody in those facilities are hoping their funds don't run out on them before they expire. Seriously. They're praying because they know the alternative. The alternative is no help and no compassionate end-of-life care, nowhere. So the only people that are getting, how do you say, help with their dying moments are people with money. Unless you've got amazing family that are there and doing the best they can to try to give you some comfort. But I'm just saying that right now, sedative palliative care is typically available in two choices: an overdose of Seconal, which is a sedative that it's just a drug that puts you to sleep. And apparently, if you take it in large enough quantities. I think 10 grams or something like that, they say is a lethal dose. That puts you to sleep and you just don't wake up. Well, they could do that with morphine too. I would prefer morphine personally. But again, I don't want to drink it. I don't want to ingest it. That is definitely a much slower approach and assimilation. If I push that button, man, I want to be out like a light. Goodbye, good night. I don't want to have to sit there and wait for, I don't know, a few seconds, minutes, or longer for it to enter my bloodstream sufficiently enough to knock me out. And in the process, I might taste it. It's not might. You do, if you drink it, you taste it. I don't want to taste it. I don't know what other people would like, but I mean, heck, they even give, convicted felons that are on death row a last meal, for crying out loud. But innocent, elderly, and disabled people are being turned out in the streets to die of exposure. It is a miserable way to go. You're treated disrespectfully. You're treated like a bum, like a vagrant. Sometimes you're arrested just for being poor and homeless. It's a horrible plight. And yet there's all kinds of vacant buildings across America and vacant rooms and so on and so forth in motels and hotels across the entire country. Um, Vacant office spaces and so on and so forth that can be converted into affordable housing if necessary. In other words, there is more than enough structures to get all of the homeless off the streets right now, and it needs to happen. I don't know. If humanity continues in the direction you're headed in to be this cold and callous and cruel, I don't know what death and destruction is going to find you all, but it's coming. In other words, I don't blame God for the fact that people suffer when they die. He tells us in the scriptures that those that are suffering are ceasing from sin. In other words, when you're actually physically very ill and dying terminally ill, you're thinking about your mortality. And if you have any sense at all, you're preparing your soul to meet your maker because you're about to. In other words, you're saying your final prayers literally, truthfully, seriously. And you're setting your house in order, so to speak. In other words, you're making whatever amends you can make, apologizing if necessary to those you've offended. I write notes like I don't like Muslims. What I'm saying there is I hate Islam, and it's hard for me to respect anybody that would choose to have any part of it whatsoever, because I find it that detestable. The reason I find it detestable is not out of a lack of knowledge about Islam. It's about an accurate knowledge of Islam. Islam is absolutely an anti-Christian cult. It denies the crucifixion and resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ, and without that fact of history, and it is a fact of history, there is absolutely not one shred of hope for anybody. The fact that God sent his Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, to die for everyone means that everybody needs him. Means that without him, you're dead. And what that means is you're separated from our eternal Creator. You don't know him. And I know for a fact that everybody that has not repented and been baptized in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ does not know our eternal Creator and is not conversing with him. In other words, you might be talking to something, but you're not getting any replies until the day that you repent and are baptized in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and filled with his Holy Spirit. Now, his Holy Spirit is every bit as real as your spirit. It's who you are without this flesh. It's what's going to pop out of your body at death. Your spirit. It's you. It's your personality, it's your energy, it's you without substance, without flesh and bone. That's what a spirit is. Some people call them ghosts. Everybody has one. There's no body working around on planet Earth, walking around alive without a spirit entity inhabiting it. Now, spirits look just like the person does physically, except doesn't have substance. So you're still recognizable. So when the Holy Spirit of Jesus Christ comes to you, visits you, and inhabits you, it's recognizable. It's the voice of Jesus Christ speaking to you by the presence of his Spirit in and upon your life. In other words, Jesus Christ passes from being, how do you say, a concept or belief to somebody that you actually know when you are truthfully anointed with his Holy Spirit. That's why the scriptures say, if any have not the Spirit of Christ, they are none of his. You don't know him. So even if you call yourself a Christian or born again, if you have not received his Holy Spirit, you don't know him and are probably in danger of hearing that, depart from me, I never knew you, at the judgment. You need to know him. And he says in John 14:20 through 26, how that will occur. If anyone loves me, they will keep and obey my commandments, and the first of which is to repent and be baptized in his name and to be filled with his Holy Spirit. Then you will know him because he will be conversing with you. It won't just be one-way prayers. You'll be absolutely hearing answers from God. Now, if anybody says God doesn't talk, then they're lying to themselves and to you. Because he that formed the mouth most definitely speaks. He that gave you ears to hear gave them to you for a reason, namely to listen to him above all. Now, I see what we endure down here as a time of trial and testing. I see this as God setting each soul for a moment in the valley of decision, and is saying, okay, choose to be good or choose to be evil. In other words, choose God or the devil. When you listen to evil thoughts, words, ways, and deeds, and you act evilly, you are following the devil unto your own damnation and destruction. When instead you act on the virtues out of love, out of compassion, out of peace, out of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, the virtues that come from God alone, the good Lord, and then you are choosing to be good when you choose God. He's the one who imparts those virtues. They're called the fruits of his Holy Spirit, and you can read them in Corinthians. The greatest of which is considered to be love. Now, love is not, how do you say, selfish. It's absolutely the opposite. Love is caring and compassionate. It's patient. In other words, endures much. Endures offenses, and so on and so forth. So when I say I don't like Muslims, what I'm saying is I still love those people and want them to be saved. But in this world, it is impossible for me to actually respect them because they don't care enough about their own souls to really consider what worldview they are attaching themselves to. Because if they did, as far as I'm concerned, if they had a God, compared it to their God-given conscience, they wouldn't be a Muslim. They wouldn't follow somebody that was 53 years old and took a child still playing with dolls and molested her. If that was the only offense Muhammad did, that would still be such a serious offense that they wouldn't follow him. But that's not the only offense Muhammad did. Muhammad in the Quran advocates rape, slavery, all kinds of sexual immorality. Islam is not, how do you say, a lawful religion. By definition, It is a criminal organization. And that is factually true. And it's not hate speech for me to say so. I'm saying that the doctrines that are found in the Quran, when compared against sane laws that are founded biblically under God, are actually crimes. Are crimes. And that's why in Sharia nations, rape victims can be punished, beaten, sometimes even murdered, rather than the rapists. Because under Islam, women's testimonies are not as don't bear as much weight as a man's. So the woman is under the burden to prove the rape. And yet if they're pregnant and they're accusing rape and without any proof, instead they'll be punished for adultery or for fornication or some other sexual offense. Typically only the women. Even though men commit those same offenses but don't get punished. At least not as often as women do under Islam. In other words, Islam is fairly brutish, and it's definitely, how do you say, misogynistic in its doctrines and practices. Men can marry more than one woman, but not vice versa. Women are considered possessions or not equals. They don't have the freedom to choose who they marry generally under Sharia dominant nations. They're told who to marry and are sold or bartered or traded. Sometimes gang raped. Women, not even women, children as young as 9 or even younger, forced into marriage to men that abuse children. These are facts, folks. These are observable, current, modern day facts about Islam. And anything so evil that it would ban the Bible, like in certain Sharia nations, the Bible is banned, is something so anti-God, something so anti-Christ, something so evil that it has no place in the civilized world. Christ is nothing but good. He's the one who gives us life and every breath we take. He's nothing but good. He's the one who came down here and said he's the resurrection and the life, died and then raised his body from the dead to prove it. And he's alive right now to answer anybody and everybody that has enough sense to call upon him, to recognize that he is the one true God, the one who absolutely has eternal life, just like he says, and gives eternal life to his followers. So what I'm getting at is, since this life is absolutely nothing but a test and a trial, and we're born into bodies of death that are, they're mortal. They're destined to die. I see that dying process as a test for the rest of us. Are we going to watch our brothers and sisters suffer and make them suffer, really suffer in death? Or are we going to offer them some compassionate end-of-life care, since the technology is available to give it to them? And I'm saying that, I would prefer, God to just take my spirit out of my body like that. But that often is not the way people die. And I'm saying I've already suffered so much that I've pretty much had my fill of personal suffering. I don't want any more. Now, some people might call me a wimp or whatever, and I'm like, well, I don't know. Maybe you've been through as much pain and suffering as I have, and you have the right to say so. But I doubt it. And besides the pain that everybody goes through, breaks, dislocations, scrapes, burns, cuts, etc., 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 lifelong. I was shot in the head at close range. And even that doesn't compare to what this incompatible blood transfusion has done to me, to what internal poisoning and an incompatible blood transfusion has done to me. it has caused serious, pervasive, excruciating suffering for years, day in and day out, every waking moment. It's like being tortured every waking moment for years, endlessly. And I'm to a point where I can't take it anymore. I don't want to take it anymore. I refuse to take it anymore, type thing. I've been suffering that long and that intensely that I'm furious about it. I'm like, in other words, I've seen him. I know him. I know he has the power to heal me. He called me son, and I want to be treated like it. I've been suffering it unbearably and intensely for years, and he knows it. And I'm angry about it. I'm like, I don't know the reason. I don't know the reason. Maybe it's so that I would say what I'm saying. That I know there's an awful lot of people that suffer on planet Earth and are not given options of compassion at all. And suffer so much so that they practically beg to die. And I'm saying humanity needs to, while you're alive, think about your life, all of it, including your dying moments, and how you want that to be, if you have any say so whatsoever in it. And I'm saying that for those that are suffering terminally ill, forcing them to gasp out their dying breaths in agony is cruel, is sadistic. It's, as far as I'm concerned, it's sick, based on current technologies and available compassionate end-of-life care. Now, I do not want governments making that choice of when somebody is expendable, or when somebody's expiration date has come up. I want everybody to have the absolute right to make their own choice. That's what I want. I don't want other people telling me that I cannot elect sedative palliative care, that I must suffer until my dying breath, no matter what, no matter how painful, no matter how much that or intense that is, as far as agonizing moments before actual death. I don't want people forcing me to suffer when there is a merciful way to leave this world, to say, hey man, I did the best I could. I told you all Jesus Christ is Lord. He's the only way to the good place, because this world as it is sure as heck isn't it. This world has both good and evil in it to test you and to try you. But if you've chosen him, and I have, I choose the Lord Jesus Christ, or he chose me, and he is my personal Lord and Savior. But as far as enduring as much pain as I've been enduring every single day until I draw my last breath, I've had it. In other words, it's like I've testified. What more can I do? I've told you what's going down on planet Earth, how evil the situation has gotten. Illegal organ harvesting worldwide. You can go into a hospital for anything, and they can just kill you and hack you up for your organs, and nobody's prosecuting them. I survived it, and I have done my level best to tell the whole world that I survived it. I tried contacting every authority I could think of in our entire country, and nobody's done a damn thing. They're leaving mass murdering doctors and nurses loose. I don't care if you all think, that I went nuts or whatever. It's not right of you not to investigate. It's not right of you not to at least try to look at the evidence, to just automatically assume that for whatever reason I'm lying about illegal organ harvesting and mass murdering doctors and nurses now loose in hospitals across our nation, getting away with killing at least hundreds of thousands, if not millions, every year. And people say, well, where are all the dead bodies going? It's like, well, they're the ones that deal with death all the time. I'm sure they have, a standard of practice of carting off corpses, left and right out of hospitals. But people die there all the time. But I'm saying doctors and nurses are accelerating how many people die there. I'm not saying all of them. I'm saying that there's death squads. They know each other and they have all agreed to lie for each other. They work in groups and they keep any Christians, because these are definitely not Christians. Most of them are Satanists, and they work in hospitals. Now, I wouldn't have believed it, if it hadn't happened to me firsthand. So I don't blame people for being skeptical, but I'm telling the truth that there's satanic groups that for some reason somehow have ties even in the government, and somehow some way they even have ties in like police chiefs and so on and so forth, where underlings are told not to investigate these types of crimes that I'm talking about. And I'm saying the only way for it to stop is for enough people to become aware that you demand supervised health care for all anesthetized procedures. You got to have cameras linked to off-site servers that are out of the hospital's control for every single anesthetized procedure. Now, a lot of these doctors and nurses are so arrogant they might try to murder somebody even while the cameras are rolling. So if somebody dies prematurely by doctors and nurses on camera, and they pretend like it was some kind of accident, you better keep track. Accident after accident happening by the same doctor is murder. They don't keep making the same damn mistake, or if they are, they should have their license to practice revoked for incompetence. Hundreds of thousands of deaths each year recorded that are absolutely caused by malpractice, medical malpractice, and that's just in America. But over the course of the world, there are more than 1 million iatrogenic deaths in hospitals every single year. In other words, medical malpractice people die prematurely because of what doctors and nurses did to them. Those are just the ones of record. Millions more people disappear worldwide. The easiest way for them to disappear is by doctors and nurses, right in hospitals. And I'm telling you that I survived attempted homicides by doctors and nurses, that they intended to hack me up for my organs, and that the greed in this country has gotten that, and all over the world has gotten that bad. And for whatever reason, authorities are not arresting them, even though authorities also end up in hospitals all the time. If you leave mass murdering doctors and nurses there, it could be your wife, it could be your children, it could be you that gets murdered and off by them. So you should be arresting them. You should be arresting every last one of them. And all these depopulation agendas, these evil depopulation agendas by the New World Order, in other words, by the wealthiest people on earth, are there because they actually just really don't care about the masses, and they actually want billions of people to die. So unless billions of you get real angry real quick, billions of you are suffering and dying under their watch. In other words, you should be arresting those in charge of the World Bank at this point, because they're the ones that have all the money in the world and control all the money in the world. And they're the ones in charge of the corporations and everything that's put in your processed foods and your hygiene products and so on and so forth. And there's more than enough carcinogens in all of it to arrest them all for assaulting the public and for intentional genocides. Just because the poisons kill you slowly and cause cancer, make you look like you died of natural causes. I mean, think about it. It's the Western industrialized world that has the highest rise in cancer rates over the past few decades. And why? It's because of all the toxins that they're putting intentionally in the air, food, and water, the genetic modifications going on, and the corporate farming practices of where they spray crops with toxic chemicals like weed killers and so on and so forth right before harvest. And that's why there's a whole bunch of adverse reactions to wheat these days. It's not to the wheat. It's to the poisons on the wheat. My notes depopulation, conspiracy theories, strategies of war, have gotten censored off of Facebook because I'm exposing them and their crimes. I don't know why else. It just happens to be the most critical notes that are exposing um, depopulation agendas. In other words, outright genocidal attacks on the masses. Now they might not be, how do you say, quick, like dropping bombs and stuff over everybody, but they're nevertheless killing people. They're attacking our lives and our quality of life all over this planet. But in Western nations, what's caused the reduction in birth rates and the increase in death rates are very sinister methods under the guise of population management. And it's reducing our lifespans and our quality of life. So I'm just saying, look, if you all aren't going to listen to me or read my notes and start taking actions, I don't want to be here. I can't. In other words, I have a distaste for humanity if they're going to let these people continue to get away with their crimes against us all. If they're going to continue to let the elderly and disabled be murdered by being driven out in the streets. I don't want to look at it anymore. I don't want to have anything to do with it other than to, I suppose, wait and see what God does to y'all. He's either going to change your hearts and your minds real quick to start acting decently towards each other, or you're all about to be wiped off the planet, and I don't want to be here to see it. In other words, you better start standing up for yourselves and your children. I don't mean to sound like I don't mean to sound like a patronizing parent trying to lecture you. I'm saying for your own good, for your own sakes, you need to stand up. You need to unite, all of you. The working masses need to unite right now. Stand up for your quality of life and improvement of your quality of life immediately, or it's going to get really bad. In other words, if you don't care about the fact that they're just killing people in the streets, the landlords at whim are just raising rents anywhere they feel like, as high as they want. They just buy a property and, I mean, the rent might have been whatever, 500, and then they just raise it to 1,000 that fast from they just double it, and nobody's stopping them. Now I'm saying those are worst case scenarios, but if it's doubled even in a year or two, nobody can bear that kind of housing cost increase. But some landlords are factually increasing rents by hundreds of dollars at purchase from 1 month to the next on tenants that don't have lease protection or rent control, and they're just driving these people further and further away from any type of decent quality of life. And in worst case scenarios, they're driving them right into the streets. So sedative palliative care, in other words, it's like if it doesn't get better real fast, and I mean real fast, I don't want to be here. I'm tired. I've been trying to fight this evil my whole life. When I was the whole reason I went to prison, I looked at it and became so disgusted that I wanted to die even as a young person, because I didn't think I had a chance at improving it by myself. And that's when I was young and healthy. And now I'm much older, and it hasn't improved. It's gotten worse. I thought after Christ came into my life, I'd have some power with God, some influence, some way to reach people. But it seems like I'm hated even worse than I was. I know there's decent people out there. I know there's some true brothers and sisters that realize, hey man, none of us are perfect. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you got a basement or something you might be willing to, I don't know. I'm pretty quiet. I don't listen to loud music very often at all. Sometimes if it's a really good tune, praise and worship, I might turn it up a little bit. But I'm relatively quiet. In fact, lots of times people don't even know I'm around. I'm in some place where somebody's not going to drive me out into the streets. I've been pushed around my whole life, and I'm tired of it. I think people doing that are not acting morally and ethically at all. Um, from my perspective, I can't believe it's even legal. It's actually killing people. If you don't think so, if you're healthy, try living homeless for a little while. Exposure of the elements without shelter is hard even on healthy people. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't special forces, gung ho, in your because like I said, I've lived that way in the wilderness. I've lived in tents and built my own lean-tos and so on and so forth when I was younger and healthy. I went up and down mountains. Then I could deal with it. But picture being elderly and chronically ill and trying to live out under the elements. No shelter. Um, it's not. In other words, what I'm getting at, it's not easy even for healthy people. You typically have to have some training and some knowledge, and or just be, just a fool for, um, how do you call, roughing it. It's one thing to have a tent with nice padding or blankets or even an air mattress or something. It's not really roughing it then. But these people are sent out into the streets with the clothes on their back and maybe a little backpack if they're strong enough to carry that. And they're aged 50s, 60s, 70s, and or chronically ill in need of medical care that they can't afford or get. No place to shower, no place to wash up at all. They're kicked out of places if they try to even go into a restroom to give themselves a spot wash, their face and hands and stuff. Begging for food and dying, dying from exposure and maltreatment. And people say get a job. I'm like, act like you're a homeless person and try to get a job. Now, if you're healthy, you might be able to, I don't know, do some day labor thing where they hire you to, I don't know, to rake rocks somewhere or something. Who knows, to demo a house or some type of day labor work or something. If you're healthy and strong enough to do it. Picture being chronically ill, truly disabled, kicked out in the streets. Uh, like I said, if 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 I knew things were as bad as they were when I was young and healthy, I would have been trying to advocate, but I didn't know. So I'm advocating now. I'm just speaking out. I'm gonna. I've already posted letters, blogs, etc., etc. I've contacted representatives and housing authorities and everything. But people have to unite in sufficient numbers to solve these issues, or you're not going to have any, how do you say, hope or resolutions for yourself if you should meet tragic circumstances. None of us plan to, but it happens. I didn't plan on marrying a woman that would try to kill me for the life insurance. I didn't plan on meeting doctors and nurses that would try to kill me for my organs. I didn't plan on that. Just happened to be my unfortunate circumstances of life. And I certainly didn't plan on having landlords constantly raise the rent on me nonstop, lifelong, driving me further and further and further away into poorer and poorer situations. Harder and harder living. Lower and lower quality of life. To the point where I'm just like, mercy? Mercy? Is there any wealthy people left with mercy and compassion? Mercy? Please stop raising the rents on the poor, elderly, and disabled. On people that have tried their hardest their whole life to earn a decent living, but there just aren't enough jobs that pay a livable wage with good benefits. Mercy for all of them, please. Don't stop driving people into the streets to suffer and die. Or at least have the decency to offer such unfortunate souls the option of sedative palliative care. To say, hey, look, you can try to live homeless, or you can go over here to this facility, lay down and rest your soul. I want it, again, I'm being very clear here, to be by lethal injection for me. Other people might select something else, but that's the way I would want it if I'm given that option. I'd want an IV in my arm and an electronic injector that's hooked up to a button underneath my finger. Then all I got to do is push it, and it first puts me to sleep with morphine, and then automatically injects whatever drugs doctors and nurses have determined will make sure I don't wake up. I think I've spoken plainly enough in this video on that, and on other videos, and I think I've stated why. I haven't gone into length as to the amount of suffering and the types of suffering I've been enduring, but they're bad enough to make me the strongest advocate possible for sedative palliative care by choice for everyone. Personally, I think my adoptive father, from the amount of suffering he's telling me he's going through, since he's in a state and in such a nice facility, I personally think that if he's not aware of that option, that he should be made aware of that option. I try to talk to him, but often parents don't listen to their children, especially if they're just somebody that was adopted, not really blood relative type thing. Or they might think that I don't know, he might get the wrong notion that I wouldn't miss him, or really don't miss him, because I can't even visit him. I'm not financially sound enough to. to do that. Can't afford to travel that far. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to afford, even a hotel room to stay for a night or something, even if I could travel that far. So, unfortunately for me, um, he's dying without my ability to even visit him and try to show my respects. Now he's a fighter. I mean, he wants, I suppose, to live as long as possible. Um, he's a good guy, strong. But he's disabled and he's been suffering his whole life under his disability. But now, it's getting worse. And I'm just saying, if people didn't think that that was something bad, I'm not even sure why they do. Like I said, when they see their pets reaching old age and unable to even drag themselves around, feed themselves or water themselves or make it to their little kitty litter box or outside to urinate and defecate, then we love our pet. People that have pets typically love their pets. Some of them are more attached to their pets than they are to other people because their pets, how to say, typically don't um, give them the same type of challenges that other people do due to our imperfections. The pets are usually loving, forgiving. They're usually there trying to comfort you, um, even if you're not how do you say, as good a friend as you should be to some of them. They're grateful for I mean, even morsels of food and some water, and they show their appreciation and so on and so forth. Lots of times people aren't even polite enough to give thanks these days. At any rate, I remember I would invite people to when I was working and I had the means. I'd invite them over for a barbecue or something, and they'd be like, I'd be feeding them steaks and whatever the best food I could afford was. And they'd be like, I don't know, trying to ask me money for, to try to share a package of hot dogs or something. Poor people have it that hard. For them, that might have been their last dollar or something. So for them, it was hard to share without getting some compensation. It's not that in other words, it's not that they're stingy. It's that, that might have been their last buck, that they, to bring those hot dogs to the barbecue or something. See what I'm saying? So when people would ask me for, money or something like that, I'd try to give them extra when I had it. I haven't been able to actually grilling up and having a barbecue with friends and family is one of my favorite things. I haven't been able to do it well over 10 years. You get elderly and disabled and on fixed income. Um, Goodbye to almost all socialization. When you're poor and suffering, unless you have real friends, they all seem to be too busy. doing something else or something. Associates, they suddenly don't even know you, man. Colleagues and so on and so forth, man. Who is he, Steph? Oh yeah, that crazy dude or something. You know, he told us there were murdering doctors in our hospitals. Crazy. In other words, not willing to consider that, you know, somebody cared enough to try to warn him something true and serious. It's easier just to say that a rare survivor just went nuts rather than the fact that I am a rare survivor. In other words, I know that millions are killed that way successfully. And because I've survived it, I've been speaking out, and I will speak out nonstop as long as God enables me to about it. Because I know that millions are dead, can't speak out about it because of it. It's got to stop. It's unbelievably evil. One way or another, it's going to stop. God's either going to change your minds and your hearts and your souls so you start treating everybody like you'd want to be treated. In other words, righteously. Or you're all going to be removed from this planet. One way or another. If you don't show compassion upon the poor, upon the elderly, the sick, and the dying, it's almost guaranteed that your demise is going to be nothing nice. So I'm saying offer everybody sedative palliative care. Offer it. They don't have to accept. They don't want to. If they want to fight, you know, every single day to, you know, for every little last breath that they possibly can take. And trust me, when I say fight, folks, for some people it is a real fight just to breathe. You'll try to take a breath just as deep and as much as you can and feel like you're not getting any oxygen at all, like you're suffocating. There's something about organ failure, tissue failure, failure, blood complications that adversely affect even a basic thing like something you've been doing lifelong, just taking a breath, to the point where you feel like you're suffocating. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible feeling. You feel like you're being suffocating, being strangled with nobody with their hands around your throat, no smoke or nothing. You just, no matter how much you try to take a breath, you just can't get oxygen. The muscles even in your diaphragm start to fail. So you actually consciously, in your dying moments, some people have to try to force themselves to try to gasp for another breath. I'm not saying everybody. I don't want to. I'm not trying to paint that death is absolutely horrific for everybody, because that's just not true. But I'm saying that for some too many really suffer when they're dying. And that's why it needs to be an absolute right. As far as I'm concerned, worldwide, patient's choice, patient's rights. If they are suffering uh, from either injury, severe injury, accident, and or terminal illness, or just simply old age, and they are suffering, and they want to leave this world and cease to suffer, then it is compassionate and right to offer sedative palliative care to everyone. Compassionate end of life, just at their own choosing, to be sedated where they die in their sleep. The sedation puts them to sleep, and then the rest of whatever drugs are administered makes sure their heart stops and their brain no longer functions. So they're not going to wake up. They just go to sleep. If it's done by injection, a proper dosage of morphine can put even a 400-pound person to sleep within a second or two. If they start counting from 10 backwards, it's unlikely that they'll reach 1. Let's put it that way. Most actually don't even reach 7. In other words, if they have an IV hooked up in their arm and they're injected with a proper dosage of morphine, I mean, most go to sleep within a matter of 2 or 3 seconds, and not more than 10 seconds out, asleep, unconscious. You're out. And the worst side effect of that is the capillaries in the back of your tongue. You might taste the medication in have a sense of it for not even a second before you gnaw it out. And it's not really pleasant, but it's not really terrible either. It's just, you just know that you've got, morphine in your blood. And you know it for about that long before if you're in severe pain, sedation. Now, some people might choose sedation just to try to get a decent amount of sleep. I haven't had a decent night's sleep for so many years. For over 10 years, I have not had one decent night's sleep. In other words, sedatives like sleeping pills that would knock me out and let me get an 8-hour stretch of uninterrupted sleep would probably have me feeling quite a bit better than I am feeling. The pain is probably compounded over time due to the fact that I have not had uninterrupted sleep for so many years due to the existing pain and suffering. Sleep deprivation over time can cause pervasive severe pain. It can amplify it, and I'm probably suffering to some degree. In other words, I have not felt rested in so long. I've really forgotten what it feels like. In fact, it seems like the last time I felt really rested was when I was a wee little kid. That's how long. So, chronic severe pain, terminal illnesses, and sleep deprivation, all that leads to a premature death. The poor, elderly, and disabled, you might think can even see a doctor, but man, my budget was so challenged that I was reduced. I mean, in diet to basic staples. I could not afford my copay to see physicians. And when you're somebody like me that has survived unusual circumstances, you get skepticism even more from medical professionals than you do from the general masses that know that there's that kind of evil loose in the world, that illegal organ harvesting is a fact, that greed has reached an epidemic of evil all over this planet. And the reason why medical professionals are even more skeptical is because they know that if you're telling the truth, what was done to you is darn near impossible. In other words, what was done to me is darn near impossible to survive. But I have done so, and I've managed to stay alive, and it's not been easy for a number of years, prayerfully and diligently. But it has not been easy at all. In other words, I've managed to stay alive, but in other words, just barely. I have not recovered any type of good health at all since these attacks. Some people say, well, if you're suffering so much, why not, I don't know, overdose yourself and stuff. It's like, did I tell you that I've seen the Lord Jesus Christ and that I know He's good? Did I tell you I'm baffled as to why He hasn't healed me yet? In other words, that I'm actually still fighting prayerfully for my own miracle. I consider it a miracle that I'm still alive and breathing, but the miracle I want is a return to good health and to be free from this pain and suffering. In other words, I'm not 70 or 80 yet. I shouldn't be experiencing the end of life symptoms yet. But from everything I've read and studied, man, unfortunately for me, I have been. In other words, I'm not ready to give up either. Yeah, my suffering's been intense, but I believe in miracles. And I'm asking good people, please, to pray for me. But landlords raising rents on the chronically ill and disabled like myself, forcing us to move. Moving is considered one of the most stressful things in life, even when you're healthy, even when you plan it, even when you have the money for it. But on the elderly and disabled, man, that's an attack on our lives. It's life-threatening to do that to terminally ill and chronically ill people without any type of help to physically relocate them, or forcing them to try to interact with the public when they're really really ill, to have to try to sell the last of their possessions. It's unbelievably cruel. It is extremely cruel. Like I said, since I've experienced it lifelong, um, if I were president, I would be arresting such people for assault and possibly attempted homicide if it was planned and deliberate. In other words, if they know that they're driving poor people into the streets. Now, since I'm not president, I can't do that. But I can suggest that the masses effect laws to protect everyone from landlords getting away with what I consider are heinous crimes. Heinous crimes. Jacking rents on the poor working masses beyond their ability to pay. Forcing them to lose their possessions, their livelihood, and monumental amounts of stress. They're killing them. They're killing the poor people by 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 making it impossible for poor people to pay their bills. Rising housing costs, and at exorbitant rates. It'd be one thing if rents were all controlled nationwide, where the most that a landlord could raise the rent is whatever the cost of living increase was for percentage wise, or actually would, instead of taking any cost, the cost of living increase is not just for housing, it's for the fact that everything has gone up in price, the cost to stay alive. So landlords should be regulated to a tiny percentage of being able to raise the rent on anybody that's on fixed income. In other words, if all the cost of living increase was 1%, a landlord could raise it, say, 0.1%. Or if housing is considered 30%, then 0.3% is the most that they could raise the rent on those people. If you're going to have rent control laws, I just want to make affordable housing a right, where everybody has the right to their own primary residence that no other citizen can just walk into, or assault, or whatever, criticize or tell them how to live or anything, where it's their home that other people can't molest them in, can't assault them in, can't jack prices on them from one month to the next. That everybody has a right to a secure dwelling, lifelong, unmolested from other people. It's your home. Now, it might cost you in your early working years if you can work to pay for it all, but while you're paying for it, it's regulated with whatever your earnings are. So no matter whether you're working for minimum wage or not, you're able to afford to pay for and own your own dwelling. If you're still paying on it by the time you grow old, but it's still your dwelling that nobody can take from you, your home. Nobody can kick you out of. Nobody can just knock on your door and walk in unannounced and just start telling you how to live and what to do with your primary residence, your personal space. Landlords, I'm not saying all of them, but a whole bunch of them just ignore the laws, do whatever the heck they want. They consider it their property, and they don't. Some of them don't care one iota about their tenants. Now, I don't hate all landlords. There's some of them that are actually really good, that are really responsible, and compassionate about their tenants. Where if they raise rents, they raise it reasonably, and so as not to necessarily lose the building themselves. Some landlords actually are trying to protect their tenants from what other landlords are doing nationwide. So they have to raise the rents to keep the building under their own control, or they could lose it due to their own financial challenges or whatever. But when they raise the rent, they try their best to raise it in a way that the tenants are not absolutely forced to relocate, and or taking food out of their mouths. In other words, they raise it within reason, a small percentage over time. Um, even if you think about it, fixed mortgages over 30 years are fixed. And that's a certain amount of security for homeowners, that they know what their payment is every month. They know what they have to come up with every month. Now, if they don't come up with it, they can lose their savings and everything they invested if the bank decides to foreclose on them. I know that happened to me too. Like I said, when I was sent home to die, I could not work, so I couldn't keep up my mortgage payments, so I was foreclosed on. So I know that you can lose your own down payment and your own savings in the process, because the banks don't try to sell the home for market value. They just try to get their loan back. So they typically undersell it just to make sure they get their cash back as soon as possible. Screw you and your savings and everything you put in it, all your hard work, years of your life. So there's nothing protecting the homeowners in that regard from banks, from lenders. And I'm saying laws need to be created that stop protecting the absolute wealthiest people only, and protect not just tenants but homeowners too. So that if they get chronically ill or something, that lenders can't just come in there and kick them out of their homes and sacrifice their life savings in a short sale just so they can have their loan instantly paid off, to the detriment of the person they just kicked out of probably years of hard work and their dreams crushed. Foreclosures and evictions are horrific, folks. And yet they're done routinely daily now. And they're not done by the poor against the poor, folks. They're done by people so much better off than all the rest of us that is hard for even the working masses to even imagine. Banks, the banks of the world, are those families that have the wealth of the world. Those are what the banks really are. They are wealthy people. At the very highest levels of the World Bank, they live in literal palaces. Better than royalty. Just Google the Rothschilds' palaces. Look at some of the families of the estates of Rockefellers and DuPonts and so on and so forth families. The wealthiest families on earth. Look at their estates. Take a good look. Take a gander. Open your eyes. The wealthiest people on earth produce the money that all the rest of us work for. And you really can't negotiate your wages unless you are just so superior in skill to everyone else in your field that you're a very desired commodity. In other words, very unique, talented, skilled person. Otherwise, in a global population of billions of people, people are becoming more and more expendable and are being reduced to more and more slave wages, lower working conditions, and so on and so forth. That unless the poor masses stop undercutting each other and instead unite and demand a proper quality of life for you all, the wealthy will continue to live in their palaces and laugh at how they're getting away with maltreating the general population on earth. And to the point where you have somebody like myself saying, look, if you're so evil, if you've become so evil that you just want to kill everybody on the planet, show some humanity, some compassion, and maybe your own stay in the lake of fire won't be so bad. In other words, maybe you might get a little bit of relief in the hereafter for showing some compassion to your murdered victims by at least offering sedative palliative care.